Hello everyone, I'm Vlad Sparastoria, and today I present this beast. Many people have asked me to bring something bigger to the channel, but bigger weapons aren't necessarily that easy to find. This is a Sako TRG-22. Sako is a Finnish company that specializes in the production of precision weapons. They started with the famous TIKKA competition rifles in various calibers. Later they merged with VALMET. VALMET is another Finnish company that produced weapons. In particular, they produced very famous copies, or improvements we could call them, of the Automat Kalashnikova system. By the way, another famous Automat Kalashnikova system, the Israeli GAL, is almost a direct copy of the Finnish VALMET, which itself is more of an improvement than a copy of the Automat Kalashnikova. 47 system VALMET had produced a sniper rifle for the Finnish army, but it was not widely adopted. Since both companies were struggling a bit, they merged. Sako thus inherited this sniper program from VALMET and developed it for both the domestic and international markets. The TRG, the weapon seen today. There are various models of the TRG, but the main ones are actually two, which we can call the 20 series and the 40 series. The 21 is a precision rifle, but it's quite bare of some accessories, while the 22 that we have here today is actually a militarized version. For example, it features a new bipod and muzzle brake up front. The 40 series is similar. The 41 and 42 have the same differences as the 21 and 22. With the big difference that the 40 series is bigger. It's bigger because of this and this. It mainly uses the 308 Winchester, but the 20 series also includes calibers like the 260 Winchester and 6.5 Creedmoor. These rifle calibers are considered full power. While the 40 series is intended for magnum calibers, the 300 Winchester Magnum, or the most famous and widely used today, the 338 Lapua Magnum. Why have a weapon like that at a shooting range that's only 50 meters? Well, it's just cool to have. And simply, a lot of people who come to shoot, maybe sometimes for the first or second time, want to shoot with a sniper rifle because they've seen it in video games. Here it is. Do you see why choosing the Series 20 and 308 Winchester ammunition makes more sense here? First, because the ammunition costs less, and second, because you're shooting at 50 meters and shooting at 50 meters with a 338. Lapua Magnum is a bit overkill, considering that it's a round whose range is measured in kilometers, not hundreds of meters. So let me move the camera. This way I can tell you not only how the Sako is built, but also how most modern sniper rifles are made. The first thing we notice is the huge scope that almost doesn't fit in the frame. It's a scope with magnification from 4 to 16 times, which is really a lot. Obviously, it's an exaggerated scope for what this rifle is used for, specifically in the context of this shooting range. I repeat, at 50 meters, you can basically shoot even with iron sights. But for people who come here and maybe know sniper rifles from video games, the bigger the scope you put on, the cooler it looks. And so, let's say the experience of shooting with a weapon like this sells better. On the left side, we don't notice many things, but we do notice something very important regarding the construction of the weapon. Until the 70s and 80s, most sniper rifles were simply more accurate versions of already existing weapons. Modern weapons are not like that. I told you in the video, for example, about the M14 that often there are vibrations on the structure of the weapon. And the contact between the barrel and the structure of the weapon is a problem. Because when the barrel heats up, it expands, and the material around it can cause slight pressures that are really very light. But they can really change the point of impact on the target if the target is 2 kilometers away. Not only if the bipod, for example, rests on the barrel or another pressure point on the barrel itself, because the weight of the weapon rests on the barrel and then on the bipod, so the barrel. In fact, it actually bends, even if we don't see it, this thing. It's really interesting, for example, to watch weapons firing in slow motion, because it's surprising how much the barrel and all the metal components bend. It doesn't seem that way to us, because they look like very solid things, but they actually bend a lot. It's important to minimize these bends and vibrations, or the variable introduced by the bipod as a new support point. All this structure down here, which also includes the trigger, the stock of the weapon. Actually, it's a separate piece that probably doesn't come into contact with the barrel, except at this point. Where is the barrel fixed? It has a structure around it which we could call a chassis in English. Since the barrel only touches here, it's fixed at this point. There, where the bolt is inserted, everything is much more stable. This long structure, which goes under the barrel but doesn't touch it at any point, contains all the other necessary parts. For example, it contains the trigger back here, it contains the stock, and by extending forward here, it serves as a support point. In fact, we can see that the bipod is actually attached to this structure and not to the barrel itself. The barrel is free along its entire length. This concept in English is called a free-floated barrel. A free-floated barrel is a barrel. That doesn't touch the structure of the weapon at any point, except obviously around the chamber, where it obviously has to touch the rest of the weapon, otherwise it wouldn't be a barrel, and that's where the bolt engages. In this way, the barrel is as little affected as possible by external interference that could change its geometry. And in precision weapons, this is extremely important. Just go and take a look at the L115, the English sniper rifle, and you'll also notice that it has this very visible barrel which doesn't touch any part of the weapon structure. Minimizing external interference and eliminating variables is fundamental for accuracy, because in precision shooting, with firearms, it's all about repeatability. The more repeatable a firearm is, the more the physical action of firing happens under the same conditions, the more technically accurate the firearm will be. Actually, to learn about these differences, go check out my video Guns 101, where I talk about accuracy, precision, and the issues related to hitting the target as consistently as possible. I also discuss ballistics in that video. These are very important concepts to properly appreciate precision firearms. On the right side, we already notice more controls. Obviously, we have the trigger. The trigger is a so-called two-stage trigger, an adjustable trigger that's very important for adapting the firearm to the shooter. Some prefer a lighter trigger pull, others a heavier one. The magazine release is in front of the trigger, which we can remove. This is a 10-round magazine, as I said, in .308 Winchester. Obviously, it also fits into this whole structure, into the chassis of the weapon, so it doesn't come into contact with any of the important parts, like the barrel or the bolt. Then, of course, we have the bolt. The bolt action system is well known. Many people ask me, it's a question I get asked all the time, why are sniper rifles bolt action? The answer isn't that simple, because often when I respond, people misunderstand my answer a bit. There's nothing mechanical in a semi-automatic that makes it less accurate. That's not the point. Many people misunderstand this. The bolt action system actually has two main advantages. One is tactical, which I've been told about, though I doubt it a bit. In short, since it's not semi-automatic, the shell doesn't fly into the air and reveal the shooter's position. Okay, that might make sense, but the real advantage is that it's much easier. Making a bolt action weapon accurate and lightweight, by making it bolt action, you save a lot of weight, and these weapons weigh nothing. Actually, they don't weigh little at all, because to make them accurate, you have to use heavy components. A heavy barrel, simply put, a heavy scope, and all these things. A light weapon can't match a heavy weapon's accuracy, so what's the result? The confusion between bolt action and semi-automatic comes from the fact that with equal weight, a bolt action is generally more accurate, with equal weight. But there's nothing, so to speak, in the semi-automatic system itself that makes a weapon less accurate. Many say it's the gas that enters the tube. No, when the gas operates the action, the bullet has already left the barrel. That's not the point. It's that it's easier to make it lighter, and so with the same weight, it's more accurate. Bolt action is mainly used because of its weight. I usually always say that semi-automatics are superior, but when you're shooting, let's say at 2, 1, and 7/8 miles, first of all, you have to shoot and see where the shot goes, which takes a few seconds to get there. The semi-automatic no longer has a big advantage, but the bolt action's main benefit is making the weapon lighter. The Sako TRG moves away from previous precision rifles, which almost all use the Mauser system, but it still uses a bolt action system that cocks on opening. By pressing this lever, I can release the bolt. It's a really massive bolt in terms of weight. Here we see the departure from the Mauser system. As you can see, the bolt is triangular. It locks on 3 locking points, 3 points that support the bolt and not 2. It's very important in precision firearms that the bolt is as symmetrical as possible. Sometimes I say that swinging bolt firearms aren't particularly accurate, and that's true. Because the swinging bolt has an asymmetrical lockup, meaning the locking happens only on one side of the bolt, either the lower, the upper, or in other firearms, the side. And having 2 locking points is better because they're symmetrical. But do you know what's better than 2 symmetrical locking points? 3 points that provide even more symmetry and consistency, making the weapon vibrate less and making the shots much more repeatable. These 3 locking points are very solid and allow, especially in the Series 40 version, to withstand very high pressures. On the upper side, we have an extractor, and down here, there's a spring-loaded ejector very similar to the one on the R15M16 M4. Basically, this ejector pushes on the cartridge, and as soon as it can, it pops out. What does this do? This gives a very consistent ejection. Reinserting the bolt, of course, is simple, just like putting it in. We put it back in its position. I should also be able to see it so I can put it in myself. Here we go, we put it back in its position. We can close it. The weapon is ready to use. I won't disassemble it any further because to do that I need hex keys. Also, disassembling and reassembling a precision weapon is not something that should be done often. It should be done as little as possible. Actually, because even the slightest change in how you tighten a screw can alter this famous geometry and harmony of the components. How tightly you fasten a small screw can actually change the point of impact. If I'm shooting at 2 kilometers, yes. At 50 meters, maybe not. But anyway, I'm not going to make any changes with this weapon. What can I say? Maybe I need to try it and see if I can hit something at these famous 50 meters. Here we are with our TRG. Well, you can't see me in the shot. I had to find a weird angle to be able to show everything. Let's load our magazine as usual. Funny thing, since we're shooting at 50 meters, I'm using the cheapest, the most inexpensive metal-cased ammunition. So don't judge me for this. I'm sure someone who knows how to shoot well at long range will judge me for this. But I'm at 50 meters, not at over 300 or 2 kilometers for that matter. But anyway, we'll try to see what kind of group we can get at 50 meters with this military surplus. So let me see if you can see it well. You can see it more than well. I focused one maybe. Now I have it perfectly in focus. And to go. Let's insert our magazine. Let's put it in. Because I was about to forget my protective headphones. The weapon is loaded, so as you can see, the shell casing ejects lightly, controlled only by that spring. I'm using a somewhat unorthodox shooting position, but I'm extremely uncomfortable because it's extremely low. I should lie down to do these. Okay, I'll tell you that for a weapon of this size, you'd expect a really powerful recoil, but because it's so heavy, the recoil is actually very light. For example, when I use the M14 with the same ammo, it feels like the recoil is 3 times stronger. Okay. I messed this one up. Always a very consistent extraction. In fact, maybe that thing about the MH of the bolt action is starting to make sense, that it doesn't reveal your position because the extraction is really light. But is it enough to be sure of your shot? I messed up this one too. Concentration, it's like at the TSN in Rome with the .22s at 50 meters. Concentration. I still have ammunition. Very bad. This one I shot it well, I hope, and I'm out of ammunition. Yep. Let's close it. Safety on. The weapon is unloaded. Okay. Well, come on, not too bad. I'm pretty sure these 3 shots are the ones I complained about that went badly, while the others went pretty well. What do you think? By the way, at this distance it says 50 meters. I assure you, the scope shakes terribly. Everything shakes terribly. It's about controlling your body to reduce as much as possible the vibrations so you can see something. In video games, this reticle movement is shown as the person breathing, and there's usually a button to hold your breath, and the reticle stops moving. That's actually how it works. This is basically how it works. With focus, you lessen the vibration until bam. By the way, the trigger pull is fantastic. It's literally the best trigger I've ever tried on a weapon. What do you expect from a weapon like this, after all? Really fantastic, and that's all from me and the Sako TRG. See you in the next video. And remember, they're available, and don't forget that the t-shirts are available. Besides this, where I shoot and all, there's also a great t-shirt, Vlad's Big Glue. Click the link in the description to go to the store. See you next time.